Hello and welcome to ChemTube. My name is Chakube Paul and I will be your chemistry teacher on this platform. This YouTube channel is dedicated to teaching basic chemistry. It is a platform where chemistry will be taught right from the introductory topic of chemistry all the way to other necessary topics that will enable you as a student pass any chemistry exam that you enter for. On this platform, for every lesson that will be taught, the basic learning objectives will be outlined at the beginning. And then during the course of the lesson, questions would be asked, which you can go ahead to answer through the comment section. And when the lesson is coming to an end, a summary of what has been taught will be given so as to serve as a recap. You can go ahead to email me if you have questions that you would like to ask regarding the topics that are being treated. I will put down my email address in the description of each lesson or in the comment section. For today, the topic that would be looked into is Introduction to Chemistry. This is the topic that will be taught because it will serve as a foundation to every other topic that will be covered on this platform. And the basic learning objectives for today's lesson is that at the end of this lesson, it is expected that every student that paid attention to this lesson would be able to define chemistry in a comprehensive way, with the keywords included in the definition, because keywords are what makes a definition to have a meaning. And the second learning objective is for you as a student to be able to list the basic branches of chemistry covered in the high school syllabus. Thirdly, it is expected that you'd be able to list the benefits of chemistry or the application of chemistry to our well-being as people. And lastly, which is the fourth learning objective, is for you to be able to list the negative impact, or say one or two things regarding the negative impacts that chemistry has brought into existence. Without wasting any time, we begin today's lesson, Introduction to Chemistry. When you hear the word chemistry, to some people it's something so big, something that is incomprehensible, without knowing that on a daily basis we come in contact with chemistry through our activities. For example, during cooking, when you are trying to bake a cake in the oven, when you are trying to use soda water to remove a stain from your favorite cloth, be it shirt or blouse, you are coming in contact with chemistry. Chemistry is basically a science that studies matter, just as physics has to do with matter, and biology, of course, has to do with matter, but in that case, living matter. Chemistry studies matter. But when we talk about chemistry, the focus of the study is on the composition, the properties, and the uses of matter, as well as the changes that matter is subject to during the course of interaction with other matters. So, to define chemistry, you must make sure that these keywords are included in the definition for it to be a comprehensive definition. I'll write it out, then I'm going to use sodium chloride, which is commonly known as table salt, to illustrate this definition of chemistry. Chemistry is a science that study the composition, properties, and uses of matter, as well as the changes associated to matter. This is basically the definition of chemistry. And when you look at this definition, you can pick out the key words. It is a science. And that science study what? Matter. And when you talk about the study of matter, you are talking about the composition. That is, what is that matter made up of? What and what, or what number of things came together to form that matter? Properties. What are the features? What are the attributes of that matter? Uses. What are the application of that matter? And finally, changes. We know that there are two kinds of changes in chemistry: physical change and chemical change. We would look into this in the next topic. But matter is always subject to what? Change. For example, change in state. It can change from solid to liquid, from liquid to what? Gas. Matter is always subject to what? Change. Now, to illustrate this definition, let's use sodium chloride. Sodium chloride. Sodium chloride, like I said, is known as what? Table salt. If we talk about the composition, what elements came together to form sodium chloride? We talk about what? Sodium and chlorine. This is why the chemical formula is what? NaCl. Because sodium and chlorine came together to form sodium chloride. Okay. Now, if you talk about the properties, what are the properties of sodium chloride or table salt? First, when you look at it, what do you see? You notice that it's a what? Solid white crystal. Number one. Then another thing you observe is what? It is odorless. It doesn't have odor. Then another thing that you can associate, or another character that you can associate with sodium chloride is what? It has a taste. Then in aqueous solution, it is a good conductor of electricity. This is another characteristic that you can attribute to sodium chloride. And of course, it has what? Melting point and boiling point. There are so many other characteristics, but those ones are mostly related to what? The chemical properties, because every substance tends to have both physical and chemical properties in chemistry. So these are some of the attributes. Then when you talk about the uses, what do we use the table salt for? We use the table salt as a preservative and as a flavor when we talk about food. Then the sodium chloride serves as an ingredient in the making of cleaning products like shampoo and toothpaste. Then during the winter, like so many countries are in the winter season at the moment, when we tend to have snows and ice on the road, basically sodium chloride is poured on the road to serve as an anti-freezing agent. It tends to reduce the rate at which water turns to what? Ice. So there are so many other uses or applications of sodium chloride, but these are just a few. And then, of course, sodium chloride can undergo change. It can, which I said, it has a melting point and a boiling point. So for it to have a melting point, it means that it can exist in what? Aqueous form. And when we talk about aqueous, we are talking about liquid form. So basically it undergoes changes, a lot of changes, and when it goes into reaction with another substance like an acid or a base, basically it is no more what it is. So it goes through some changes. This is a description of the definition of chemistry. I hope it is clear to you at this point. If it's not clear, I would like you to use the comment section to write what is ambiguous. And if you have another definition of chemistry, I would like to see it too. Yes, I mean another way that you can define chemistry while maintaining these keywords. Okay, now having defined chemistry, let's now talk about the branches of chemistry. Now, when we talk about branches of chemistry, there are numerous branches of chemistry. But with respect to the ones covered in the high school chemistry curriculum, these are the basic branches of chemistry. Branches of chemistry. Number one, we talk about analytical chemistry. Analytical chemistry. Analytical chemistry has to do with the analysis of a particular substance. And this particular analysis can be qualitative or quantitative. When we talk about qualitative, it is non-numerical analysis. And when we talk about quantitative, it is numerical based. Like for instance, if we decide to react hydrogen with atmospheric oxygen, quantitative analysis is talking about the amount of hydrogen that reacts with a given amount of oxygen to form water. Okay? Now, qualitative analysis has to do with the observed attributes of that reaction. For example, when hydrogen reacts with atmospheric oxygen, it usually gives off a pop sound. There is always an accompanying pop sound. Other qualitative attributes that are observed when analyzing a substance include the smell, which you observe using what? The sense of smelling or the nose. And then what you see with the eyes, the color changes. There are so many qualitative features that one can observe through analytical chemistry. Then number 2, we have biological chemistry, or we can say biochemistry. You see, this particular branch of chemistry is focused on chemical reactions that takes place at molecular level in a living organism. Chemical reactions that takes place at molecular level in a living organism. This biochemistry is essential for pharmaceutical students, medical students, and generally students that are in the medical profession or medical line. There are others that are also very, very into this biochemistry. Yes, it is not just the medical students, but I just used the medical students and the pharmaceutical students as an example of those that go so deep into the biochemistry. Now, number 3, we have inorganic chemistry. Basically, inorganic chemistry is a chemistry that studies different compounds and the elements that come together to form these compounds. Inorganic chemistry looks at the structure of these elements and the compounds. And then a typical example of compounds that fall under inorganic chemistry is the salts, which is usually formed as a result of neutralization reaction between acid and what? Base. Now, there is a different branch of chemistry for carbon and its compounds, and that particular branch of chemistry is known as organic chemistry. Organic chemistry. Organic chemistry studies carbon and its compound. That is where you see the likes of what? Alkane, alkene, alkyne, and the rest of them. The alcohols. That is where you study them, because basically these groups of compounds are composed of carbon and its what? Associated elements like hydrogen and oxygen in different forms. That is why it is known as carbon and its compound. In organic chemistry, carbon must always what? be one of the elements that make up the compounds that are being what? Studied. Then number 5, we also have physical chemistry. Now, physical chemistry has to do with what? The physical attributes or properties of different substances. For example, when we talk about change in states, it falls under what? Physical chemistry. When we talk about oxidation and reduction, that is redox reaction, it falls under physical chemistry. When we talk about chemical equilibrium, it falls under what? Physical chemistry. Physical chemistry deals with what? The physical properties or behaviors of different chemical species. Now, these are the 5 basic chemistry branches that are covered at the high school level in terms of what? Chemistry. Now, having said this, let's talk about the benefits of chemistry. Benefits of chemistry. Now, when we talk about benefits of chemistry, we are talking about the application of chemistry. In what areas of life can we say that chemistry is applicable? In what areas of life can we say that chemistry has shown itself to be of immense importance? I can tell you that in every area of life, we find chemistry being what? Applicable. I will give just a few examples, and then you can go ahead to mention other areas which you think chemistry is highly beneficial or applicable to us as humans. Now, number 1, we talk about clothing. Clothing. Now, so many textile materials are being used in sewing of or designing of different clothings. But I can tell you that all these textile materials are as a result of extensive chemistry-based researches. For example, we have cotton tree. But that particular cotton tree that yields cotton as its product, the cotton is not just used the way it is as a cloth. I mean, we don't just get the cotton and then put it on and it becomes a cloth. No, the cotton has to go through some processes. It has to be put through processes through which it becomes a finished material that can now be used in sewing or designing different clothes. That is one of the areas in which chemistry is important, because the researches that we are talking about are chemistry-based researches. Now, let's talk about number 2, health. Now, a lot of surgical equipments that are being used today are a product of what? Chemistry. Likewise, the drugs that are being prescribed to you and I when we go to the hospital as a result of one illness or the other is chemistry based. Chemistry is being applied in the health sector to save and preserve life. Number 3, let's talk about shelter. Shelter or housing. Now, when we take a critical look at houses that are being built, if we look at the materials used in building them, we can see the footprint of chemistry written all over these materials. Let's take, for instance, the woods that are used in one capacity or the other in the construction of houses at least for example, the furnitures in the apartments. Now, these woods are usually chemically what? Preserved. Okay, what about the cement? The cement that serves as a binder for the bricks or blocks, that is chemically formulated. Now, let's talk about the glasses. The glasses used for the windows, for the doors, and for tables. Those glasses are chemically processed. So you can see that there are so many ways that chemistry is beneficial to us in terms of housing. What other materials or things that are used in building can you attribute to chemistry? That is, can you see that chemistry played a role in their existence? I would like to hear from you regarding that. Now, number 4, transportation. When we talk about transportation, the structural parts of today's vehicles, be it aircraft, be it electric cars, are all products of what? Chemistry-based researches and innovations. For example, the alloys that are used in making the structural parts is chemically formulated. What about the specialized fuels that is used in powering these vehicles? They are all chemistry based. If we even talk about today's electric cars, the electric cars are driven on hydrogen fuel or batteries, and these hydrogen fuels are chemically processed. The batteries we are talking about is made up of anode, cathodes, electrolytes, and current separators, which are all chemistry related. Now, let's now talk about education. Education. Now, I am writing with a marker. This particular marker has an ink which is chemically processed. Now, the container that this marker or the body of this marker is made of what? Plastic. And this particular plastic is chemically what? Processed. What about the books that we use in writing in classroom? What about the books? Those books are also processed chemically. If not, we won't have the books that we use. Okay? Okay. So, these are basically 5 areas that chemistry is beneficial to us. We can talk about agriculture as well. Agriculture. In terms of agriculture, we have fungicides, we have rodenticides, we have herbicides, we have insecticides, and we also have fertilizers, which are all chemically processed and that contributes in one way or the other to a bountiful harvest. So we cannot say that chemistry is not important in this particular area. Okay, so having looked at this, you can go ahead to mention some other areas that chemistry is beneficial. I can tell you that in terms of building or making of weapons for warfare, chemistry plays its role. If for nothing, nuclear chemistry. But I just want to stick to this for now. Okay? Now, what are the negative impacts of chemistry? What are the negative impacts of chemistry? Negative impacts. If we want to look at negative impacts, we can start with drug abuse, because all the drugs that are being abused, all the overdose cases that are being reported and are being investigated, They are all as a result of what? Drugs that are produced and that are being used by people, even though people tend to abuse them. We can talk about cocaine, we can talk about heroin, we can talk about stimulants. There are so many of them. Is it ecstasy? They are all chemically formulated pills, which people tend to what? Abuse. So, number one, drug abuse. Number two, we can talk about pollution. The issue of pollution. Pollution can be land pollution, it can be air pollution, it can be water pollution. In what ways is pollution related to chemistry? For example, land pollution. When we talk about what? Oil spillage. Oil spillage is as a result of what? Exploration and exploitation of crude oil. And the crude oil in question is made up of what? Chemical elements and compounds and substances. They are all what makes up the what? Crude oil, which tend to pollute the land. Now, let's talk about air pollution. Air pollution can be as a result of gas flaring. It can be as a result of exhaust gases from your motor vehicle, which tend to contribute to acid rain, and as well as what? Greenhouse gases. We can talk about water pollution. Wastewaters from different manufacturing processes are sometimes not being properly treated and then discharged into natural water bodies, which as a result has a detrimental effect on the flora and fauna of these water bodies. So we can see that pollution is a big issue with respect to what? The negative impact of chemistry. And then number three, we can talk about corrosion. Corrosion is otherwise known as the rusting of what? Iron. And it's as a result of reaction between iron and atmospheric oxygen in the presence of water or moisture. Now, these are basically some negative impacts, and anything that corrodes can never be remediated. You cannot remediate a rusted iron. You cannot get back the iron again. It is gone and gone. And it is usually cost intensive. I mean, it costs you money. It makes you lose some money, because when something corrodes, there is usually a need for it to be replaced. Is that clear? So that is one of the areas in which chemistry has had a negative impact. But the truth is, when we look at these negative impacts, we can see that they are mostly man-made related, meaning that if we decide to be more responsible, if we decide not to be abusing drugs, if we decide not to pollute the environment, and if the government can be strict in terms of the polluter pays policy, whereby those that pollute the environment are required to pay for the pollution that they are causing. If the government can strictly implement this policy and other policies, we will definitely experience lesser pollution in our environment. So if you decide to weigh both the benefits and the negative impacts of chemistry, the benefits on one hand, the negative impact on the other hand, which one do you think outweighs the other? Should we, because of the negative impacts of chemistry, decide to do away with chemistry as a subject, decide to do away with chemistry and the benefits that comes along with it? Should we? I'd like to know your view about that. So, in this lesson, like I said before, We start with highlighting the learning objectives, and we end the lesson by stating a summary of what has been covered. In this lesson, we've looked at the definition of chemistry, where we said that it is the study of matter, that is, the composition, the properties, and the uses of matter, as well as the changes that are associated or connected towards that matter. We looked at the branches of chemistry, and we said that the branches of chemistry includes analytical chemistry, organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, physical chemistry, and as well as your biochemistry. And we talked about the benefits of chemistry. We said in terms of education, it is beneficial. In terms of housing, it is beneficial. In terms of transportation, of course, it is beneficial. In terms of our health, it is more than beneficial. That the benefits of chemistry cannot be overemphasized. And lastly, we just looked at the negative impacts of chemistry, which includes drug abuse, pollution, and corrosion. This is where this particular lesson will be brought to an end. Now, if you'd like to be a part of the next lesson, I would implore you to go ahead to like this video and as well subscribe to this channel. And after doing that, also click on the notification button so that when the next topic is out, when the next lesson is out, you will be one of those that will get the notification that this lesson has been added to this particular YouTube channel. You can get across to me, like I said, through my email address, and I will do as much as I can to get back to you. Thank you very much for having been a part of this lesson. I hope to see you in the next class. I hope to hear from you regarding today's lesson. Take care of yourself and have a lovely day. Goodbye.